Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
All right, well, welcome to Getting to Know You. My name is Joe Nash, and today we're going to get to know Literacy New York of the Greater Capital Region, and we have with us its Executive Director, Bob Stevens, and its Director of Educational Programs, Sue Hensley-Cushing. So welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Now, Bob's been here before. Why don't you tell us a little bit about, you've had sort of this major reorganization the last few years about basically what you used to be and what you are now. And I know you covered 5 counties and all this.
Sure. Since the last time that I was here, Joe, we've been through a merger. We merged the Literacy Volunteers Mohawk-Hudson, which was Albany and Schenectady counties, with Literacy Northeast New York, which covers Saratoga, Warren, Washington County, to create Literacy New York Greater Capital Region, which is a 5-county program, and that was July 1st of 2009. So we're just about 6 months into our merger.
And all your services, which we'll talk about in a second, are volunteers, is that correct? The tutors and all that.
Primarily, our direct services are delivered by volunteers, yes. So, some 300 to 400 volunteers over the 5 counties. We do have some services that are delivered by staff, but the predominant portion of our service is delivered by volunteers.
All right, well, as we go on, the website will be sort of in front of us here, and we will talk about how people can get involved. But one thing before we start, I want to mention, I've been a librarian for like over 20 years, and every library I've ever worked in, I see the tutors, and they've, always working, and it's always heartwarming. I mean, I'm a librarian, I'm a big reader. It's always amazing to see. Maybe you could talk about some of the statistics first. It's always amazing to me to see adults sort of learning to read. It's almost like you can't believe it, and I don't mean it, but it's. Tell us about maybe who would come. Like, what kind of people come to for your services?
Well, I've mentioned before, and I've been with Literacy New York now for 10 years, and before I came to Literacy New York, I had no idea that those people sitting in the library across from each other or next to each other and talking very quietly and with books out in front of them, what they were doing. Yeah. I just thought they were family or friends and they were just having a conversation, and realizing now that in every library in our 5 counties, there are people who are sitting down and being tutored, whether it be in literacy or in math or in science or school projects. The need for adult literacy programs in our area is significant. Something up to approaching 20%. It's depending on the county. It could be 17, 18, 19% of adults read at or below a 5th grade level. So there is a significant need for literacy services, because you can just imagine how difficult it is to get a job or to get a better job if your reading skills are only at a 5th grade level or below, and many times it's below that. And so, given the economy and given the difficulty in getting jobs and getting a better job and retaining your job, the need is tremendous for people coming to us looking for help.
Well, the other component of your organization is, and I've noticed this as being a librarian the last 5, 6, 7 years, the number of immigrants seeking help, which one of your programs is called English Language Learning. So besides teaching adults to read basic literacy, you also have this other component, which I feel is almost just as big as the tutoring these days.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. We have, there's quite a lot of what you would call maybe first generation Americans coming to this area, and people coming literally from all over the world, whether they're coming as refugees, as immigrants, whether they're coming to join other family members here. And a lot of the tutoring work that we do, and actually some of our most enthusiastic tutoring work, is working with people from foreign countries.
Well, I would say, being here in the library, some of them are more enthusiastic learners are children of these.
Yeah,
I mean, they're really.
yeah.
I think I see more kids sometimes doing homework more than the American kids. So why don't we talk about some of your basic services? I guess you have three main components, you could say. You have basic literacy for adults, which I never knew included math. You do also do reading, writing, and math. This English language learning. And you also do exam prep for people getting their GED and taking citizenship tests. So maybe we could talk about each one and maybe the basics of each. Maybe you could divide up how you want to talk about it.
Sure. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the students.
Okay.
The basic literacy student, is someone who was born here, raised here, went to school here, maybe even graduated from high school here, but reads at or below, still reads at or below a 5th grade level. It is very difficult for that individual to raise their hand and say, I need help.
Yes.
And in addition to that, there isn't a natural group of people to support them. They're sort of out there on their own. So it's a difficult situation for that person to be able to come to our program and know that there's help to come to our program. The immigrant student, however, they're usually part of a community.
Yeah.
They may be part of a Korean community. They may be part of a Polish community. They may be part of a Russian community. And once they hear that others are getting help with their English language skills, then it's very easy for them to identify. And there's certainly no stigma for them to come and raise their hand and say, hey, I want to learn how to speak English. So yes, the ELL program is very, very significant portion in parts of our catchment area where there are a lot of immigrants, because it's very easy for them to come to our program.
Well, I know that people come into our library all the time, people from other countries, and they say, do you guys have classes here? I think they see people using a library, but they actually think maybe we run it, but all the time people ask. But so all right. So why don't we talk about, Sue, since you're the charge of the educational programs, the basic literacy component of what you do, and it's all through tutors, and later on we'll talk about the tutors and how people can become one if they want, but what is it a tutor would go through with, say, a new student? And I know it's a year commitment for volunteers, but how does it start out? I mean, I know they get assessed first and all that.
Well, we basically work with basic literacy learners, adults who can read anywhere from kindergarten level all the way up through a high school level. So what happens when a volunteer tutor comes in is that they pretty much get a basic training in how you tutor reading and writing, but then they get to pick what level they want to work with. For example, if you're going to be working and feel comfortable and excited about working with someone who's reading at a 2nd or a 3rd grade level, you're going to be working with that adult student for a while, because it's going to take at least a couple of years for that student to be able to progress, 1 or 2, 3 grade levels. On the other hand, if a volunteer comes in and might have a shorter amount of time and is really good at writing or at math, they might want to help someone who's getting ready to take the GED, because that's a much shorter time period. We've got workbooks actually from the library a lot of times that you can work through, and just to give them the fine-tuning that they need to pass the GED. We're seeing a lot of that right now.
I know that on your website I was reading, your volunteers, the people who tutor, they have to go through a significant training. It isn't just like to come in for an hour and it's like 21 hours or something?
It is a significant training, and it's directed right now as part of what we've done through the merger is also pretty much re-engineer how we train our volunteers. And so our training now is very different than it was even a couple of years ago. And we're training volunteers now to be able to sort of hit the ground running, to be able to tutor right away, to have strategies and resources right at their fingertips to work with their learners. So the training does that. It's pretty intense. It's also fun.
Is it like an all-day thing? Or?
We spread it out over a couple of weeks, in 3-hour segments, and then we ask our tutors to come back for continuing education. In fact, we're having a big multi-county tutor conference in April for that kind of training.
Now, how many tutors would say your organization have out there now?
We have about 400.
400? Oh, I didn't know it was that big.
Yeah, it is.
Big.
And that lets us reach a really small percentage of the number of people who need the services.
Well, you're saying the tutors, then they can sort of choose the level that they want to work with and
Yes.
sort of match them up with, okay.
Yes, yes, because it's a very different, I mean, tutoring someone who's reading at a second or third grade level
Yes.
is really different than someone who's working on their GED.
Now, does your organization provide the materials, or do they? I know they use libraries a lot, but
We use libraries a lot.
okay.
We provide materials, and we use a lot of real-life materials. We use bus schedules, menus,
Okay.
the driver's manual is really
Yes,
big
that's always
for
a-
some people.
Now, what about the English language learning? Is it similar training, or is it a whole different? Is that a whole different thing?
Mostly a different training.
Okay.
There's parts of it that are the same. The lesson planning part of it is the same, and how you work with adult learners is the same.
Okay.
But the core content is different and directed specifically towards English language learning and towards working with people from different cultures.
And again, do your tutors, when they're done, do you have people at various levels, just like in reading, and then they can choose? Okay.
Yep, and we also have been really successful with getting people into group situations, especially the English language learners, where they're actually in conversation groups and practicing their conversation, and then have an additional one-to-one tutor to help them.
Okay, I noticed,
separately.
yes, one of the things you have in my little pile here is you have these conversation groups. Now, what is this is different than obviously in the class. What is that?
They're practicing English.
So it's what it is, I guess.
It is, but in the course of practicing English, they're learning real life skills
Yeah.
about how to get along in our culture. So that you might have a whole plan as the tutor, saying that we're going to come in and we're going to learn about the layout of the city today, and you might have one of the students will come in and say, I just got this letter from the school district, and they're talking about a conference. What is that about? And all of a sudden, that's what you're going to be talking about.
So even these conversation groups have sort of a theme or a lesson.
Oh,
plan.
they do. Yes.
Okay. I know. I always see people from other countries here. They're bewildered when they come in and get like tax forms. And like, even I don't understand them. But now the other thing is this exam prep. For GED and citizenship tests, is that more, is what it sounds like? Again, is the training the same for people that do that, or is it?
It's a bit different.
Okay.
Especially for the GED, and we're partnering with other agencies like BOCES and other agencies that provide classroom-based GED prep, because sometimes they will identify students in those classes who need more than being in a large
They may not be
situation.
ready to take the.
Well, they're not ready, but they also might need some one-to-one.
Okay.
And so we found out that by partnering with those other agencies and being able to provide their strength, which is a classroom-based situation, and our strength, which is the one-to-one, we can really accelerate the ability of the students to take the test.
Now, when you said you had 400 volunteers, was that just for basic literacy, or is that for all these three?
It's for all of our for all of our programs, and depending on the community that we're in, the mix could significantly change of which students might be basic literacy students versus which students might be English language learning students.
Okay, and one thing on your website I noticed, it doesn't seem to be one of the what's this Wilson Reading Intensive? What is that all about? Is that yet another service, which I can't?
It is.
I mean, how many people, before I could talk about that, what kind of staff do you have here at this place? You're running all these
Not
things.
a lot, but very hardworking.
There are 9 of us, but there's only about 6 full-time equivalents in those 9
Really?
people.
Okay.
Yeah. That's why we lean very heavily on the volunteers to provide the bulk of the direct services.
Well, like I was saying earlier about my 20 years as a librarian, this, to me, is one of the greatest organizations in America. I mean, not just you guys, but there's so many groups that do this. So what's this Wilson Reading Intensive? What is that?
That's for people like me, who I consider myself to be a reading geek. And what the Wilson Reading Intensive is a remediation program for learners who read at probably below a third grade level, sometimes fourth, that really need to go back to the beginning and learn how to sound out words, learn how to.
So this would be people that aren't even ready for the basic literacy class?
No, they are in basic literacy,
okay.
but what we have learned over the last 10 years that I've been with this organization is that they need very special remediation.
Okay.
They need to be able to use multisensory approach to learning. Most of those people have reading disabilities. They don't have cognitive disabilities, but they have a reading disability, and being able to use an approach that uses tactile kinesthetic modalities, as well as some of the other ones.
These are all adults too?
Yep.
Adults, okay.
Yep. It's a program that works with kids as well, but we are extremely lucky. We are only one of 2 pilot sites in the state to do this for adult literacy.
All right, so on the website, I think, and again, it'll be on the screen here, you have a lot of upcoming training. Tell us how if someone wants to become a tutor, now they've heard, I guess you got some choices. You can either do the English language learning or how would a tutor, what do they have to do?
Well, one very good way is to go to the website, because by going to the website, you can find out about the trainings and when they are and where they are, and you can get registered for those trainings through the website.
And like I should say, these trainings are all over the place. If you're
right, there are many different communities.
Okay.
Many different communities. Another way is to call our office. And again, if you go to the website, each of our local offices, there's a contact number there, and you can call the local office and speak with one of the program people in the local office, and they can give you more details about it, and you can register through them.
Okay. And then these training, is there a certain, you said it's 21 hours?
Well, it depends on what kind of what kind of stream that you take within your training. But there's orientations and sort of more informal in-house kind of presentations now through the end of February, and in March we're into training season.
Okay, and there's a drop-down calendar on the website. You can sort of see where all these trainings are.
And basically, it starts with 12 hours of training, and then there's additional training depending on the specialty area that you're going to concentrate on.
So to be a volunteer here, it sounds like quite the commitment. Besides these 21-hour training, could you talk about, I think I read on here, the commitment, you have to make a commitment, was it like a year, and you have to meet 2 to 4 hours a week? Tell us the sort of, if people watching want to do this, what they're going to be in for, I guess.
Well, for sort of like the mid-level of tutoring, we ask for a year's commitment. If you can tutor twice a week for an hour, that is the best. If we deal with adult volunteers and adult learners, and sometimes twice a week is too much, but if you can do twice a week, you will build momentum. You'll see things progressing pretty quickly. So you'd want add a little bit of lesson prep time to that. So not more than 2 to 4 hours a week for the year. We do ask that you come for 2 continuing ed classes in the course of that year.
After you're starting? Okay.
And that would be really tailored to what your specialty, your tutoring specialty has become at that point.
Okay, now I'm still getting over that you have 400. I didn't know you had so many.
And we could easily use 400 more.
That's right. Well, then people watching who just want to be a volunteer, go to the website. So now why don't we talk about, I noticed on the website, besides all the things we've been talking about, tell us about some of the buildings you use, like this computer lab. I know you use libraries. Where do these tutors, basically they can meet anywhere they want, can't they? Or
they can meet anywhere they want. We encourage them to meet in a public place, so that's why libraries, community centers, churches, even McDonald's, are popular places for people to sit down and tutor. And part of the matching process to match a student with a tutor is geography and time of day. So we try to find students and tutors who are available daytimes, evenings, available in Colonie, in Schenectady, in Albany, in Saratoga, in Glens Falls, to make it as convenient as possible for them to sit down and meet together.
I mean, I know, like I say, in our library, I see them here all the time. I mean, we have all those tables and
and we do. As Bob said earlier, our basic literacy learners sometimes are shyer about coming forward, and so when we need to have private spaces like in a library or something, those folks who felt a little uncomfortable about their reading level or something like that would have first dibs, basically, on private space as opposed to sort of being out in the more open.
Well, I know here in our library we have some people just sit out in the open, and we do have a little room if people want to go in.
So we try to be sensitive to that.
Okay. Now, one thing that I wanted to just mention, just talk about briefly, how is your organization funded? I mean, it seems like you're doing so much. I sort of...
Well, we certainly get a lot of leverage out of the use of volunteers. You know, 400 volunteers working 100 hours a year apiece. And the value of a volunteer hour in New York State now is about $28 an hour, and that turns into hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in value in volunteer time. But the underlying funding for us to be able to have staff and to be able to do tutor trainings and to be able to do outreach and assessment for students comes from the New York State Education Department.
Okay.
Some money is federal pass-through money, but that's only a very small portion. A big portion of our money is state money. And of course, as you know, the state budget is a very significant issue and concern to us. And over the last year, when other state agencies and programs were taking budget cuts, we took ours. We took nearly a 9% cut in this last 12-month period, and still don't have a contract in place for this year. In the governor's proposed budget, there are draconian cuts projected of nearly 40%. So that's a big concern to us. But in addition to that, we do fundraising, and in June we have our signature fundraiser coming up, which is the Read Run, and we do it in Saratoga, and it's on June 13th. Okay. And it's for people who want to, who are runners or walkers, and it's just a delightful time. And again, you can find out information about that on our website.
Is this one of your big fundraisers?
Yes, it's our most significant fundraiser is the Read Run.
Okay, and now I know another way, because through my paycheck, I give through the United Way to the I don't know what the equivalent literacy of Rensselaer County, because I'm from Troy, so I had to support them. And I know they have a big thing every year, some kind of at the Albany or the Troy golf course, like a jazz thing. And so you guys have to, besides depending on the state and federal, you have to try to raise money.
And I'm glad you mentioned the United Way, because the United Way is a significant funder of our programs, both the United Way Greater Capital Region, which covers Albany County and southern Saratoga County, and the Tri-County United Way, which covers northern Saratoga County and Warren, Washington counties. They are significant funders of our programs, and we do get significant funding from folks like you who designate to our organization. So we continue to encourage that also.
Well, people watching, if you can donate, that's another way to do it. And actually, people can just donate money if they want.
Oh, of course, of course. They can, again, go to the website and there's a tab to donate.
All right. Well, one thing I want to ask you, what is, you said you had these 400 volunteers. Is it split 50-50 between the ELL or is there more for basic literacy, or is there really no?
It really depends on the area.
Oh, okay.
It kind of swings one way or the other. But I think that we make more of an effort to reach out for basic literacy learners and to create an environment where they feel comfortable coming forward and, learning how to read better.
Okay, now one thing on your website, you have this thing called learner essays, where some of your students have written little essays about going through the program, and I get the newsletter from the Rensselaer County one because, and they're unedited. Is that correct? And you read some of these, and I get the one in my newsletter. It's very heartwarming, but very heartwarming and in some ways sort of heartbreaking in a not a negative way, and the people are very appreciative of what they do, and it's really pretty amazing just to read some of these little essays. Well, I think
we use writing a lot because a lot of our learners are afraid of writing, but once they start writing, they realize, and I think it's a big aha for a lot of them, that when you're reading someone else's writing, and when you're writing and then you read it, you're reading your own.
I know. Well,
that just is something that really seems to motivate them to move on in their literacy.
Well, like I say, I didn't realize until I was reading. Most people think reading, but the basic literacy component here is reading, writing, and basic math if they want that. Okay. Well, now, Bob, what have we not covered? Is there anything else we can?
Well, I
Trying to
think you've
now.
I think you've covered certainly the breadth of our programs, the need for volunteers, of course, the need for funding, but to know that there are a lot of people out in the community that need help. And that additional support for them, on a wider scale is very important, because they are the people that we're interacting with every day, and many times we don't know that, we don't know it. So realize that in these 5 counties, there's probably 50 to 60,000 people who need this kind of service.
Okay, well, thanks for coming by. We really appreciate it. And for people watching, it's Literacy New York, Greater Capital Region. If you want to be a volunteer, and you've already heard the kind of things you can do, it seems like your classes are very convenient for people to have. It's on the website. It'll be right here on the page. And Bob and Sue, thanks for coming, and we'll have you back. And
Well, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for the opportunity.
well, that's it for this time, for getting to know you, and we'll see you next time.